Hi guys and girls, it's Pete, Mindwiseman's channel, aka Maverick Outdoors, and today is a lovely, as you can see, a spot on sunny Friday. It's the last Friday in August 2017, and I'm out for in the UK, bank holiday weekend, so I'm out for a good sort of 3 days. The odd aircraft and the odd water vehicle, otherwise known as a launch or a boat. And of course my little modest and humble Maverick Explorer Mark I canoe. Okay, let's get it on. I've got a nice cool crosswind which is actually coming sort of from that direction, so it's catching me just nicely on the face. And I'm on my way to, for a third time, to pitch at this next location. So it's been 3 times on the trot. If you've been following my travels, you'll recognise the location. But I'm going to do a slightly different tarp setup. So in the sunlight, in my open plan wardrobe, is my vest drying off, just a little bit of perspiration, although I did have my cloth down my back to absorb the perspiration because it was a very hot day. And of course the synthetic material of the PFD now drying on that hanger. So it's late afternoon now on Friday. That was a nice paddle in the sun. Still feeling hot, so I'm sort of derobed from the waist upwards just to sort of cool down a little bit. You'll notice the conditions here are so much different from the other week that I was here when I pitched up and used a 12x8 plastic tarp, which I'm using again this time round, but a real traditional A shape. So from this tree I've just wrapped around some paracord, and you can see I've sort of toggled the fastening so I can just make this a bit slack, pull that out, and this comes straight off the tree. And then from there the paracord goes down. Also is a bit of a hanging drying line, as you can see, my old faithful sweat cloth, coming down to sectional pole. You've seen this before, but I've actually got 7 sections, so it's slightly disorientated at the top, although it's actually doing the job. When it goes beyond 6 sections, where this spike is here, I've just sort of inserted it into the underneath of this second spike, which would be for the second pole, so it makes it just about 7 foot. So I've got a nice entrance. At the front entrance end I've got 2 extendable Basha poles, one either side, but it's enabled me to bring the bungee down and not take up too much footprint. If I actually wasn't using the upright extendable Basha pole, the cord to get this striation would have to continue the angle of that edge and go really wide, and then give me more surface to maybe sort of trip up on. But when you look at it, how much it's reduced, it would mean the same thing this side as well. The cord would continue right the way down to about here, and it's just sort of like unnecessary cord that I'd want to actually manoeuvre around. So follow my finger, and that's where it is, just down there, up on the bungee cord. And then of course, because I know I've got the clement weather this weekend, I can sort of keep things outside. Hence, that's why I've got quite a high profile shelter. And the odds of raining from the weather forecast that I've recorded from the Met Office is going to be -5%. So that means odds on there's not going to be any rain at all. So it's just basically up, so at least I've got a shelter. But in a funny sort of way, it's as if it's not there. Yeah, of course it's there. But as you can see, the camera is eye level and I can just walk straight in, right to the other end, and I've got a pretty good width either side. Of course, it's a little bit lower on this edge, but I'd be crouching down to get stuff anyway. And then the rear end, the back corner, is just basically, as you can see, it's definitely following the angle here, but I didn't have to worry about actually cord coming down to the ground. Not only would it be more awkward to actually make a fastening in the ground there, I'd have to clear all the shrub and what have you. But I'm not going to be moving or manoeuvring around the head end of this setup. And the green ground sheet is the footprint for my sleep space. But as you can see, this end here, I've got the stick that I used the very first time 3 wild camps ago, actually on this location that I'd actually pitched up for the very first time, and I used a stick on the outer edge broadside, and I'm using the same stick again, which I hid away, and it's coming up as the upright at the back. To continue the ridge of the A shape, and then this other rear corner is virtually near to this upright, so I could actually incorporate this as I've done 2 wild camps before on this location, but I only needed this single upright because of the nature of it being actually an A shape. So that's fitted in there, and of course the canoe is not there as a windbreak or anything in particular. It's just conveniently and safely out the way whilst I can see everything around me from a vantage point of where I'm actually basically going to be functioning within this pitch for the next 3 days. So after all that paddling and setting up the shelter and being a bit busy, I'm going to have a freshen up with some wet wipes and eventually dig out a clean vest and then eventually a t-shirt later on when it gets a little bit cool. So that's the drink bottle I've been using now for well over a year, always carabined on the side, so I've got access to it. Let's see what we've got in the magic kitchen bag. Kitchen rolls, saucepan and kettle, wind guard for the firebox, and also I've got butane gas single burner mug with container once I've decanted the tinned milk, a fruit tub, the little stick table, kitchen roll, biscuits, fold up 4 litre wash bowl if I do want to have a wash or do washing of any utensils in there, bag of earplugs, especially for when the aircraft fly over, no not really, firebox stove, gas container, some freshly prepared strawberries, sealed container and then cling film so they definitely don't leak out of the lid, but I'll tell you about that at dessert time and more about it later. Rubbish bag, a lamb steak that's just defrosted, that'll keep me till tomorrow. There's some more frozen meat in there, a prawn curry on the top, and also a wrap of maple marinated ribs, which I'm going to do on the firebox stove. Fresh vegetables, potatoes, mushrooms, beans, sugar snap peas, carrots, and then the old faithful food box. Worked out the rotation of the actual meals that I'm going to have while I'm out for these 3 days. Obviously the meat is perishable, but it's very, very cold, as if it's just been in the fridge or in the sort of ice box. I'll be able to keep the meat and perishable food cool, just like people used to do in the old days when they had a larder and before fridges and freezers were ever actually used. So as long as you keep meat cool and sort of consider how and where you're going to store it, you know, it will last for a good 3 to 4 days without any problems at all. So and keeping it insulated as well. So I've put the meat, veg, fruit, biscuits and a couple of other little bits and bobs back in the bag, as I won't need access for those for a little while, and everything else that I need I'm going to keep out and then set up, but I'll display what I've got in there in a moment, because that's what I've got to get, the MRE, the dehydrated vegetable hot pot. In that pouch I've just opened I'll get the camping gas attachment for the gas container, eco-friendly fire lighters. I've got a hexi stove just in case, as you know, always bring it with me, and also the fire lighting kit. So I'll put that back in. Look, I brought a plate. I can't remember the last time I came out wild in it and brought a plate with me, but just behind there is the vegetable hot pot. I've not tried one of these before, but I wanted it for convenience, so it's only going to take about 8 minutes. Once the water's boiled, put it in there and I can eat it out the bag. And a dehydrated dessert, as you can see, vanilla dessert. Now this one, all you do is actually add cold water and leave it so it all hydrates and all puffs up and gets a little bit more three-dimensional. And this is what's going to have the fresh strawberries added to it. As I said, I'm out for 3 days, so you know the average person is going to have 2-3 meals a day at least. So 3 3s are 9, so that's 9 meals. So you know I've sort of packed away the stuff quite conveniently. So some of the stuff takes up a small volume in transit when I've actually packed it and bringing it with me. But then of course I've got some of the fancy stuff, the meat and the frozen stuff, that's obviously now put back in the rucksack so it doesn't perish. Pleased to have a little bit of a midnight nibble and maybe dilute in the morning coffee. Got the eggs there for 2 breakfasts, so that's 2 for each morning, butter there. Bought some stuffed red peppers. I've not had these before, but everything else that I haven't shown you so far is actually going to be in here as far as the food for the rest of the weekend. Fruit juice, got some fresh milk there, and also I've got an MRE, which is actually a chocolate pudding in chocolate sauce. And this is tinned squid in garlic. Creative or what? Maverick meals outdoors to the max. Tin of beans, and then under there tin milk. So that's everything. And I'll be burning off some calories probably tomorrow when I'm actually out in the canoe, where I'll have a little bit of a jaunt, bit of a jolly, paddling around, as the weather's going to be really good, so take advantage of that. The water's calm, the weather's going to be very mild, and as you've noticed, like I mentioned right at the beginning, there's no breeze. The tarp is perfectly still, and the underneath of it is actually reflecting the sunlight, which is reflecting off the water, so you can't get better than this. But anyway, I'm going to crack on and have something to eat now. Which is going to be rehydrating that 600 calorie vegetable hot pot on the old gas cooker. That's quite a large canister. That was actually given to me by a guy I met through YouTube, and some of you might actually know him, Sam, and he's got a channel called Hobo Homestead. Really good channel as far as homesteading, which isn't that easy to do in the UK because of sort of limited land, access to land that might be for sale, that sort of thing. And he's really applied his professional skills and also his hobby skills to actually making his homestead, which he's actually put a lot of work in. So if you check out his channel, Hobo Homestead, if you're interested in that sort of thing, or just inquisitive to actually what sort of things are involved with trying to create your own homestead, I think you'll be quite impressed. So he'd invited me over to his homestead a little while ago, and I was really impressed. I did a video of it as well with my old canvas tent, so if you check that video out as well, it includes Sam's homestead. Anyway, he gave me the container because he said, oh, I don't use these, do you use them? And he was like, well, yeah, because I do like to have a little dabble, the convenience of a gas stove when you're outdoors. So it's coming up to about 7 o'clock in the evening, and it's still really, really warm. It's one of the warmest evenings we've had for ages. The sun's been out virtually all day. It's going to be maybe just a little bit of cloud cover tomorrow, but not very much. Nearly as warm as today, and also Sunday. So this is Friday evening. Just out for these 3 days. So obviously I wanted to bring some decent food with me, you know, and sort of chill. Got some reading material, some magazines. Actually, a couple of magazines that were bought for me when I was just after I got over the leg surgery, and some interesting stuff. So I thought, yeah, I'll probably do a bit of reading. I'm going to set a hammock up over there between those two trees, just there like I did before. But we're ready now to sort the meal of the day on the wild camp. So now I've finished with the Firebox stove and the saucepan, but now what I'm going to have is my dessert. In there are some strawberries with a syrup I made myself with some water and sugar, only a little bit of sugar, but you can see them all sliding around, fresh, bought yesterday and then cut up and put in the fridge last night. And the vanilla dessert, just add water. It's only about an inch from the base, then just mix it up and leave it for about 8 minutes, as you can see there, and a nice creamy vanilla dessert to go with those strawberries. You can see that I extra sealed, you can see the little blue edging around the edge of the lid, which obviously is the seal when it compacts against the edge of the container, but just in case it could leak, you know, with any pressure from other bits and pieces on top of it in the bag and in transit, I just put a layer of cling film, like I did actually the other week with the marinated chicken thighs that I cooked, and there's been no leakage from that at all. So it's coming up to about midnight now. So I'm going to have that strawberry and vanilla dessert, and then maybe chillax on the hammock, and maybe doze off reading a magazine or something. But it's really quiet. It's really calm. As I say, the last time I was here, last week, when I used this 8x12 tarp, but in a configuration using the two trees, it was sort of windy and breezy all the time I was here. Gusts of breeze kicked up now and then, but there was a general sort of current of breeze in the air, but there's nothing here at all this weekend, and I think it's going to be like this for the rest of the 3 or 4 days. So, result, spot on. I was going to mix it all together, but the separate flavour of this vanilla dessert is quite nice and sort of sweet and vanilla-y tangy. So it's quite nice to sort of taste that on its own. Strawberries on their own, and then a little bit of mix and match. So we all know where this is going. Oh, magic disappeared. That is good. Good little dessert to finish off the main meal. And then I'll knock up a brew in a little while. Good morning, folks. So you can see it's coming up to about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I've only had about 4.5 hours sleep. I sort of settled after having a brew late last night. I must have settled about 1:30, sort of 1:45, something like that. But I just really fancy a brew and a biscuit, and then I think I'll settle again in a little while. And I'll light again a little bit later on, maybe in a couple of hours, when that sun starts to cascade through the trees. Very similar to like it did the other week here, which was a really nice welcome to the day. So my first welcome to the day, cup of tea's ready. Oh, that's good. Cheers. And here it comes. Don't know if you can see that, but now the warmth, there's a little waft of it coming across. That is not from my kettle. That's a mist coming across from the waters. It's easily visible once it actually hits the bank and comes across my Basha. Can't experience anything like this unless you're out on the waters and this time of day. Spot on, brilliant. So it's coming up to about 10 o'clock in the morning, and I had a bit of a lazy lie-in after I woke up to the sunrise, which was really good. But as you can see, my sleep kit. 3-season sleeping bag. What's going on? No softy jacket, no softy trousers. If you follow my travels, you know that's the sleep kit I tend to use. Then maybe a 2-season Tropical Army lightweight sleep bag over the top of that, so I can easily get in and out if I need to during the night, emergency or urgently. So, but I thought, well, to replace it, I'd have the 3-season sleeping bag, the body warmer that I'd wear anyway in the evenings when it gets a little bit cooler, my dyed tropical jacket, army issue, and then just plain t-shirt that I was wearing, and then of course the buff. So from this end, this is clothing I'll be wearing during the day. As the weather gets a bit cooler, although you can see I've got nothing from my waist upwards, just my trousers and boots on. And of course the bag to drape over me when I eventually settle and sleep at night on the 2 mats, the 2 1.2 metre mats that I've been using quite a lot of recently, both together. For just that extra little bit of padding, not so much insulation, but it's just the padding that I require and really fancy against the ground. And of course you can see now they're folded into just a sort of a sit lean back cushion, slightly deflated. And here I've got my breakfast stuff ready. So I've got the tin beans with sausages, the egg. I'm going to grill those little bread thins over a very low heat on the gas cooker. So that was a nice brunchy breakfast, and you can see what I did just so that the mug of coffee was easily accessible within my eating area. I turned the saucepan lid upside down just to give it sort of a level surface, and that was secure, so everything was within eating reach. So I've got easy access to it all the time instead of rummaging around in a bag. I decided to carabiner clip it to the handle so I can always get it when I need it. And what also is quite handy to do is if you can structure the contents of any bags that are nearby you so that when they're closed they've sort of got a flat or reasonably level surface, and you can put other things on them, as I did especially with this rucksack where the flap lid sort of dips down a bit, where I could have my biscuits if I wanted any, easily accessible rather than going in and out the bag, and my kitchen roll to wipe things with, and also my wet wipes. It's always good to have a little system, as those of you who know that follow my travels. You know, I like to be organised, know where all my kit is, have certain routines where certain things will be set out at different times of day depending on actually what you're doing. So with something like this, you know, if I decided I wanted to carry on eating, no, I'm not. I've still got access, and then I'll actually move these and put them over from there to just what I normally have as my broadside storage area. But what I'm going to do now is fill that kettle up with water, bring it to the boil, and then prior to rinsing the plate and the saucepan, I'm just going to get a couple of bits of tissue paper, just wipe the worst of the residue off, and then rinse those off, give them a wipe, and they're ready for next use. I feel really spoilt bringing a plate with me. As you know, I normally rough it and eat out the saucepan, but this is very much 5-star presentation of the food. I think you'll agree in this particular outing. Bringing the 10 litres full of water in the water jerry can is just so convenient. I'm bringing the 10 litres so I didn't have to sort of be sparse with it, but obviously I'll fill that up and boil it up. Plus not having to procure water maybe from the river, filtering it and then treating it by boiling it or adding steri-tabs and that sort of thing to make it usable and consumable. But bringing the 10 litre jerry can with me just made it convenient, and obviously it's in the canoe so I can basically put everything I want bar the kitchen sink. But here you can see the lid which goes on top to seal that. On the inside I'm careful not to touch it so I don't cross-contaminate it. On the top, on that curved end, it's like a switch, and you turn it and it opens that little side funnel that's protruding out there on the right hand side. You unscrew that little sealed cap, and it's got a screw thread for that to unscrew, that protrusion, to go on top. So that would screw in, and you've got the tap mechanism on the top, which is great if you've, say, got a level surface for the tap to hang down and gravity draws it, but sometimes it doesn't get a steady flow, so I just find it easier to just pour it straight out the opening of the jerry can. Just as convenient. And working out as near as possible the amount of water that you need to use, consume, that worked out, and I'll probably have a litre or so left over. But so it's just the whole convenience, especially when you're out for a bit of a longer time. It just makes it more relaxing and try and have to be frugal with the water. which in certain circumstances it's good to practice that, because if you've got limited access to water or consumption of water, then it's good to work out ways of how you can sort of be minimalist but still get the best from any water that you do have. But boiling up a whole kettle of water so I can get a really efficient rinse and clean, ready for the next use of the cooking utensils. So the water's just finished boiling, but the sequence is going to be the cup, because that's least dirty. Then I'll just sort of gently rinse that out and pour the water onto there, give that a wipe over with the scourer, then empty the water off the plate with maybe a touch more out of the kettle in the saucepan, because obviously that's the most dirty, and then empty that out and then rinse everything off with clean water that's left over from the kettle. If I was to do the saucepan first, obviously I'd be pouring the dirty water onto more cleaner things. But I'm going to give the knife, fork and spoon a clean in the water that's in there, and as I say, then just rinse everything off, wipe it with a paper towel, job done, ready for the next bit of scoff. Okay, so it's coming up now to about 3:30 in the afternoon, and being a bank holiday weekend and lovely weather, there's a lot of leisurely aircraft, you know, private aircraft flying over from sort of private airfields and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of activity going on this leisure weekend, not just on the waterways, but obviously in the air as well. But talking of waterways, I'm going to go out in the canoe for about an hour and have a little paddle around and see what life is going on beyond my pitch. So here we are. I paddle a little bit and then just let the water take me as I'm sitting now. Just really relaxed, really mild, ever so still, the waters and the atmosphere. Obviously the odd aircraft flying over and birds. And a few herons at close contact on their perches, normally sort of rotting trees or trees without much foliage. And the branches sort of hang over the edge of the riverbank, just slightly over the water, and that tends to be their sort of perching areas. So you sort of look out for those, and every time I see one, I can't get the camera out in time, and then when I get there, it's flown off. But it feels nice, paddling the light, fantastic, with no weight in the canoe. One afternoon, and the sun creeping through that little bit of misty cloud. Going with the flow. Like a sheet of glass, until the next boat comes along and creates a wake. Mirror, reflecting everything that's around it. Here we go, here's the wake. Wake us up, gives a bit of a bobbing. Pausing for a little bit of light refreshment, a bit of fruit juice. Cheers. Again, it's a sort of aspects on the river that you can't experience except for being on the river. Very seldom are you going to find swans anywhere except for waterways. Single file. It's like, how do they know to do that? No overtaking. Okay, so I've had an all over wet wipe, all over my body. I've got a clean t-shirt to put on later. Even if it wasn't sort of very sunny hot in certain parts when I was going in the shade, it was still very humid, so it's nice to freshen up. What I was going to do is clean up the grill grid attachment that goes on top of the firebox and grill the leg of lamb steak. Then boil up the vegetables, add a bit of butter, sort of salt and pepper seasoning, and then have it like steak and vegetables. But I've actually changed my mind. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a sort of savoury type stewy casserole, basically. I'm going to lightly fry that steak in a little bit of oil and seasoning on top of the firebox stove. Can up and just regulate the flames so it just cooks it gently. So I've cut the veg, the potatoes, green beans, carrots, and then the sugar snap peas. And when they're all virtually done, I'm going to cut the lamb into either strips or probably cubes and chunks, and then cook that through with the vegetables with a bit of a stock cube in some of the water the vegetables have cooked up in, so it's sort of a bit of a saucy stew, and thicken it up with tomato sauce, which tends to sort of make it a bit more gravy-fied. The wood that I procured yesterday, virtually for all the cooking I'm going to be doing and use of the firebox, I've just dragged over on the plastic sheet and just started it once again with one of the eco fire lighters. And as you can see, I've brought the firebox away from the front of the shelter because there's no prospects of any rain or wet weather. Just another brief point, you can see I transferred the raw vegetables to the plate because I wanted to put the lid on the box of the mushrooms, because the mushrooms, there's going to be a portion for my breakfast tomorrow with eggs, and also if I do another meal which is dehydrated cheese pasta, and then I've got a bag of pre-cooked meatballs in a type of pasta sauce, and then I'll add some cooked mushrooms to it if I do that meal. If I decide not to, then I'll just bang all the mushrooms in with some scrambled egg tomorrow for breakfast. As I've now got the firebox going, you can see there is a little bit of smoke there, but all the wood is dry. It's inevitable there's going to be a little bit of smoke, but it's well away from the shelter. And you know, in principle, if it was to smoke up even more, you can get the fire sticks that the grill is resting on, and they've got little hook sections which you can actually pick up the firebox stove and just move it. Or else if you've got some... Oh, yeah, the geese are agreeing. You can actually move it. So that's the beauty of the firebox, especially if you don't need a massive great campfire or food cooking fire pit. I don't really want the flames getting any bigger than that, so I'll just keep them regulated so it just cooks it through, just nice and gently. Looking good. I did put a little bit of oil in just to start off the cooking, but the nice thing is as well, cooking it gently, it's going to cook in its own juices, and that adds to the flavour of the stock as well when I add the vegetables and then make it into a sort of like a quick stew. So that's taken about 5 or 6 minutes. That's just cooked through to be tender, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to transfer it just to the lid of the saucepan. So I've just also poured the juices on there, so I can now put some water in here, get the firebox going again, put some more wood in, get the flames going, and get the vegetables on the go. Transfer the meat to the plate with the sugar snap peas, which I'm going to put in with the rest of the veg when they're cooked half the way through. So then of course I could put the lid on top of the saucepan, so the veg are going to cook up quicker, and I can afford to actually build now the flames up and get a little bit more heat, because obviously it's boiling water to get the vegetables cooked up. Now it's getting a bit dusky and the light's starting to turn down now from daylight. I'm going to do what I did last night, is I've got a carabiner with my knife and TC12 torch, which I'm going to put on my belt loop of my trousers. Voila, so now I've got easy access. If I need some bright light, see what I'm doing, and also my prototype jacklaw knife that Sandy sent to me many years ago before he went big time. So, little sentimental attachment to my belt loop. So the veg have been boiling away nicely for about 3-4 minutes. The potatoes, because I sort of disc cut them into slices, they're going to cook much quicker than if they were in chunks. So I'm going to add the sugar snap peas now. What I'm going to do is empty away now some of that water, because virtually the vegetables have cooked through, and leave it so the vegetables are just slightly covered with the water, which is going to make the actual juice and gravy. So you can see I've emptied some of the water away and the vegetables are just covered. So that's going to be enough watery and nice vegetable flavoured solution to make the sort of casserole sauce. Adding the vegetable stock cube. Some pepper. Don't need any salt because there's plenty of salt in the makeup of the stock cube. I can smell that pepper. And then just to tomato it up a bit, and also to thicken it, tomato sauce, me old faithful. And the cubed meat and juice. And I'll let that simmer through for about 10-15 minutes. Sort of on a medium heat, if that was a ring or a gas burner on your cooker at home. So from start to finish, about 35 to 40 minutes from starting the firebox to now consuming this quick knock up vegetable and lamb. Sort of casserole stew. But you can just see the vegetables and the meat and everything is all glazed with the juice and the sort of gravy type solution that I made. So I've just had a couple of mouthfuls and it's really good. Nice wholesome fresh meal, fresh ingredients, but didn't take that long to cook, right from start to finish. But say that was really nice, especially after a bit of paddling and needed to replace some wholesome calories. But now we've got a bit of a splurge. It's the chocolate dessert I'm going to put in the MRE flameless ration heater and have that for dessert. So it's all inserted with the water and I can feel it's really hot on the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it double insulation so it gives it even more of an effective warming process, heating through, which I've done before, is this kneeling mat, and just leave it at the angle and leave that for a good 10 minutes because I want that piping hot. All melted sauce in the chocolate pudding. Yummy. So as you can see, it's now really dark. It's just gone 9 o'clock at night, and while that pudding's heating through, I'm going to put the kettle on the little gas stove, just nice and simple and convenient, and make a cup of tea. It's now coming up to about 9 o'clock on a nice sunny morning that's just starting to cascade through the crowns of the trees. 3-season sleeping bag unzipped and draped over me with just this end kept zipped up so it's like a hood for my boots. So that was nice and comfortable. And it's the third outing where I've used these same 2 mats and doubled them up for the extra padding, which I've really noticed a difference. I've doubled up with other mats before, but these are actually smaller and more lightweight. So yeah, I think I'll probably be using these ones more often. So as always, first thing in the morning, just tidying my footprint space, getting a few things out of the way. But what I did do last night, I loosened my boots. I wear my boots, footwear, as you know. I won't repeat it, but you know the reasons why if you follow my travels. I loosened the boots, just tighten them up again. But what I did do, these cargo trousers, I've got tie cords round the bottom, so you can actually, as you can see, fasten them in comparison to the looseness here. So I thought, well, I'll take advantage of them. I'll tie them both up so it creates a closure around the ankle and around both feet and boots. Because this time of year you'll notice there's more insects around, they're more lively. So just in case, odds on it wasn't going to happen, but I just thought, well, I'll use the tie cords and know that I'm guaranteed that I'm not going to get any creepy crawlies going up my trouser legs. Okay, for breakfast what I've done is I've just mixed up those 2 eggs with plenty of seasoning, salt and pepper in the box that the strawberries came in. It doesn't matter if there's strawberry flavouring with it, but I did actually wipe it out with a kitchen towel. Use that as just the mixing pot for the scrambled egg, which is eventually going to be cooked up once I've lightly fried with a little bit of oil the chopped up mushrooms, which I cut on top of the lid of the food box, and there's a few mushrooms left in there for a meal that I'm going to do later on. And there you have it, breakfast, scrambled egg and mushrooms on warmed up, slightly toasted flatbreads. So as usual, after my activities, just sort of tidy up and put things in a nice sort of compartmentalised position, just so you've got a nice leisurely space to then live in. And as you notice, my dry bag is actually a little bit more packed up now, because I've finished with the sleeping bag, so I didn't need to air it. If I was staying for another night, then I definitely would, obviously on the line. And you can see the other side, with that dry bag, with a few more things packed in it, has risen the backrest up a little bit. So it makes it a little bit more of an ergonomically improvised wild camp seat. As I mentioned yesterday, partially deflated, about half deflation, so that as you sit on it, where it pulls the air in certain areas, obviously when you're lying on it it's all equally distributed, but obviously when you've sort of constructed it a bit like this, it's better to deflate them a little bit and then to improvise the mats in a different way. So I'm just going to chill for a little while, and then a bit later on go for a little walk in the woods, and then have a swing on the hammock before my next meal edification. As you can see, I'm in my 2-tree chillax zone on the chill hammock. after that little walk in the woods. I'd mentioned in the previous video about sort of general waterway etiquette, you know, with people that live on the waterways, and how one of those aspects are if there's a known location, which is a stop-off point, a riverbank stop-off point, whether it's people that live on the waterways on the narrow boats or launches and that sort of thing, whereby the stop-off point might have an open area where campfires have always been lit, and the etiquette was, or has been, that you know, people would leave wood for the next person to come along, and then that would be consumed, and then the person that consumed that would leave wood for the next person. And I'd noticed that up to about maybe 3 years ago. After arriving here yesterday afternoon, early evening, around about 6 o'clock, I heard what sounded like definitely canoeist paddlers, and then I heard a sound very near to me, and it's sounds you get used to, get experience of being on the waterways, and it sounded to me like someone had moored up nearby and was taking their canoe out to put it on the riverbank. So I looked the direction that the noise was coming from and happened to see just through the trees and the bushes, about a distance of just over 100 metres, two heads bobbing around. So I thought, oh, well, they've definitely obviously moored up, and they're checking out the pitch. Then after a little while I could hear talking, and it sounded like a very young voice, a young lad, and an adult's voice. I didn't know how many people were there, as I say, I just saw two heads bobbing around in the distance. But of course sort of kept my eye out because I wanted to know who was around me. So as we look at the Basha, on the left hand side, about, it must have been an hour or so after the arrival of the canoe and the two voices, I could hear some rustling type noise, which was the sound of people walking through shrub. And then looked up and I could see two people coming towards me, an adult and what looked like a young lad. So I got myself into a position that I could see them approaching, so I could see who they were. And as they got to the broad side of my shelter, basically, cut a long story short, the guy just wanted to introduce himself, and actually within the first sentence said that he was apologising for disturbing my peace and quiet, and they would try and keep the noise down as much as possible. And the story was that it was a father and son, and every year they do a 4-day canoe trip, and they've been doing it for the past 2-3 years. And they spend 4 days, which I presume is the bank holiday weekend, where the two of them come out and they do parts of the Thames, and whatever amount of mileage on the Thames they can do over a 4-day period. Obviously he didn't know who I was. As far as he knew, I could have been the shaven-headed version of the wild man of Borneo. But you know, he just wanted to come over and introduce himself. But the point for me was that I sort of said, no, don't apologise. I was really appreciative that the etiquette of him to come over with his son and explain that they're out on this little sort of like long weekend adventure, which I thought was absolutely fantastic, and wanting to break the ice and say, you know, he didn't want to invade my privacy, which, you know, is very unusual. And prior to arriving nearby, they inquired, so I think with some people that lived along or were along the waterways, where they could maybe camp up for the night before it got dark. And they were given this location, obviously from people that are experienced along this part of the waterways, to know where there are stop-off points. So hence he got his tent out and they were camping up for the night. The son, obviously the young lad, was excited, had a bit of a campfire. There was no raucous noises, of course there wasn't. And they kept themselves to themselves. And so, you know, it was good to know that they came to break the ice and were being very polite. The father also joked and said, "I've got fire steel and sort of little fire making kit, but if they came a bit stuck, they could tell from all my kit, maybe my experience or looking experienced, that they'd come along." And I said, yeah, not a problem. If they needed anything, then to let me know. Then yesterday morning, I think I was half asleep, but again I heard some rustling and what sounded like people walking by, so I presumed it was them because it was coming from the direction that they'd tented for the night. And saw them walk by. They just walked straight past, and they were going for a little adventure into the woodland, where I've just been walking around, have a bit of a chill time, and then came back. And by that time I was sitting up ready to cook something to eat, and he just stopped for a brief chat and saying that, you know, his son, he tries to encourage his son for outdoors activities, and he was well up for it, this young lad, really sort of enthusiastic about it. And regardless of what people think about celebrity adventurists and outdoor experts, You know, he likes Bear Grylls, and he's got the Bear Grylls t-shirt and all that sort of thing. And he also had a Mora knife, which I'd actually not seen before. It looked like a type of Bowie type blade, very, very small. It was only about that length, and it had a wooden handle with a cross guard. So it looked very traditional, and it was a little chamois leatherette sheath. So we had a brief chat for about 15-20 minutes, and they said they were going to be making their way in about an hour or so once they packed up. And so I just said to him, you know, it's very unusual to be approached by people that are being very polite, to break the ice and actually make a statement, because I've experienced a couple of times when I've put my pitch up and it's blatantly obvious that you've set yourself up for a bit of privacy. Some people have actually just barraged straight through as if you weren't there, nearly tripping over guy lines and all that sort of thing. And then you see them later on with their launch moored up maybe sort of 20-30 metres further along the bank, and they're having a barbecue, and I don't think they'd like it if I sort of stomped through the middle of their barbecue space to invade their sort of privacy. So some people, you know, have just got no etiquette at all. Then I asked him and said, would you mind if I just featured this little story in the video that I'm doing of this wild camp this weekend? The fact that you guys have been really polite, you're encouraging your son to get outdoors and canoeing and all that sort of thing, and having a bit of a life of adventure, which you're encouraging him to do, and also being very polite, and the etiquette of the waterways, which this guy knew about because he has had his canoe for about 15 years, but he could have left it and sort of not said anything. And he agreed. He said, yeah, not a problem. And I said, well, I don't want to sort of invade your privacy. If not, I said, I'm not going to be offended. I said, but you know, the whole aspect of you taking your son on this little adventure, and it does refer to a point that I've brought up before about riverway etiquette, and I said, you know, you scored 10 out of 10 with that. So after that, yeah, he said not a problem. So I went down to see his pitch. He showed me where they'd camped, they'd packed up, got the canoe ready, showed me his traditional canoe, had a quick conversation about he wants to change it for a lightweight one. He's had this one for about 15 years. And so yeah, we had a bit of a sort of a farewell chat, and off they went. So I'm spoilt for chill out positions and chill out zones. As you can see, I've changed position to actually be more of a sit type angle of the hammock, and I'll just use my feet to give it a little bit of a push and a swing, enjoying the aspect of that sun that's now coming round in the latter part of the afternoon to filter through the branches. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, it doesn't get much better than this. The Firebox stove is on the go, and what I'm going to do is, I've chopped up the mushrooms that were left over, boil this dehydrated pasta and tomato sauce onion sauce in the saucepan, cook this, and then add the pre-cooked meatballs in tomato and herb sauce. So what I'll do is, once this is nearly boiled up, it only takes about 5 to 6 minutes. When it's about halfway cooked, notice the spoon is in a little strategic place on the handle, so that makes it convenient. I'll add the mushrooms actually whilst the pasta's cooking halfway through, and then add the meatballs, and then just mix it all together. Finally adding the meatballs in the sachet, and as you can see, I'm in a nice open space, away from the Basha, in the fresh air, with the sun cascading through the trees yet again. But it's still in a bit of shade, but still getting the effect of the sun, which is really nice, while I'm cooking my evening meal. Okay folks, so I've come to the end of another 3-day wild camp with my 12x8 plasti tarp. Setting up a different configuration and making the most of this weekend. Was going to stay another night, but bank holiday Monday tomorrow, I've got other things planned on terra firma. So the final thing now is to lanyard fasten this paddle to a D-ring and make my way back to put-in. So as always, thanks for watching. I hope you got a bit of interest and some maybe new ideas and at least different types of campcraft cooking when you're out on the trail. So thanks for watching, really appreciate your interest, and catch you in another video soon. Cheers, take care.